Hilchos Chametz Umatzah Perek Sheni. The laws of Chametz and Matzah, chapter 2. Today is all about what we know as B'dikat Chametz, the rabbinic commandment to check for Chametz before Pesach comes, the night before Pesach. But the Rambam introduces it with how it came about. So first we have to know the biblical mitzvah. Aleph, mitzvah saseh min ha-Torah, lahashbis ha-chametz koydem zman isur achilaseh. There's a biblical commandment to destroy any chametz before the time that it's prohibited to eat it. Yesterday we spent the whole chapter figuring out when you can't eat chametz. Now the Rambam says, in order to make sure that you don't eat chametz, there's another mitzvah which is to destroy all chametz that you have in your possession before the time comes. Shenemar, as it says, Bayoim harisha in tashbisu sa'ir mibatechem. That's on the screen over here. It says, Shivat yamim matzot tochelu. You eat matzah for 7 days, but on the first day, you destroy all yeast from your house. So it looks like, literally, that you're meant to destroy the chametz on the first day of Pesach. That's of course not true, because by the time Pesach comes in, we can't have any chametz already. So what does it mean that on the first day you destroy? We learned from tradition, that this word Rishon doesn't mean the first day. It means the day before the first day, the 14th. How do we know? There's a proof to this. It says in a different verse. This is a new verse. We didn't have it yesterday. On the screen it says, Lo sishchat al chametz dam zivchi. You cannot slaughter the Korban Pesach if you still own chametz. Now, when do we slaughter the Korban Pesach? Not on the first day, day before Pesach. Kloimar, this means to say, Lo sishchat ha-Pesach va'adayin ha-chametz kayam. You cannot slaughter the Korban Pesach if chametz is still existing in your possession. When do we slaughter the Pesach? 14th day after midday. So clearly, by the time that time comes around, we have to already have destroyed it. But how do we make sense of the word Rishon? Rishon means first. So the Talmud actually brings a verse where it says, in Iyov, Harishon Adam Tivaled, were you born before Adam? Hashem told Job, were you born before Adam? So Rishon could also just not only mean first, but could also mean prior to. So Bayom Rishon means you eat matzah. Where's the verse? You eat matzah for 7 days. However, the day before, already before the whole thing starts, you make sure to have all the chametz rid of. So that is the biblical commandment. Beis, umahi hashbasa zuhu amura b'Torah. What does it mean to destroy? Destroy physically, destroy mentally. Says the Rambam, mainly the biblical mitzvah is to destroy it in your mind. Hi sheyevat loy b'liboy. You cancel it in your heart. V'yachshe loysei ka'afar. You consider it like dirt. V'yasim b'liboy she'ein b'rshusei chametz kal. And you make as though you don't own any chametz. V'shekol chametz she'b'rshusei. Anything that is in your possession. Harehu ka'afar u'kedavar she'ein b'yitzayich klal. It's like dirt and like something that has no value or no need whatsoever. So technically, without the rabbinic additions, if you have cereal sitting in your cabinet, in your house, but in your mind you said you don't care about it, you've done the mitzvah. That's called bitul chametz. You canceled the chametz. It's not off your property. You haven't checked for it, but you did the biblical destruction.
It says also,
oh, that's another thing. So now he's asking how you're going to take care of the fact that it can't be on your property. So on the biblical level, the moment you disassociated yourself in your mind, we don't consider it to be on your property. On the biblical level. But now the Rambam says, Gimel u'midivrei soifrim, the rabbis, they always come and they add more things. They said, Lechapes achar hachametz b'machavoyos u'v'chayrim. We have to search for the chametz. Not just enough to say, verbally declare it null and void. I have to search for it in the hidden places, in the holes in my house. I found this picture online, I thought it was funny. This guy is getting all involved in his b'dikat chametz, you know? He's going for it under the cabinets, he's finding it in the crocks, he's checking everything. You need to check and take it out of your entire property. You can't just say it's sitting in my cabinet and I don't care about it. No. Find it, take it out. That's A. B, additionally the rabbis added, instead of destroying the chametz by day in the morning of the 14th, we already begin to check and destroy it at night. At the beginning of the night of the 14th of Nisan, l'oir haner, and we specifically use a candle. Why? It's very hard to tell people what to do in the morning. Morning people are off to work, they're out of their homes. At night everybody's home. And everybody knows that candlelight is very good for checking. Today there's a whole argument among the commentaries if you use a flashlight over a candle. Because if you're looking for what's good, a flashlight's even better. You have a candle, you're going to be afraid to go to certain corners, you're going to set the house on fire. But a flashlight, you'll go anywhere, you'll find it. Some people actually say that it's preferable to have both. You light a candle, but you also use a flashlight.
Chabad was saying that.
Yeah. When we were in yeshiva, our Rosh Yeshiva said that since anyway we don't stay in our dormitory rooms till the night of Pesach, because we go on vacation a little earlier, when we check our dormitory rooms, because we're going to see in the end of today's chapter that if you leave a place early before Pesach, you have to check it also. When we check it, we should use a flashlight, because it does a great job, and anyways, it isn't the time of the mitzvah. But for sure, in those days, the candle was the most optimal way of checking. Not so far do we go. We don't make a study class the night of the 13th. If it's, let's say it's a Wednesday night, we have a Wednesday night class. We cancel the class. Even a sage shouldn't begin to learn his Torah study at this time. Because you might get pulled into your learning, and you're going to withhold yourself, you're going to be stopped from checking the chametz in the proper time, in the beginning of the time. That's how far we go. That's why even here, Shulchan Aruch says, even if you have a regular minyan for mincha v'arvit, so that you keep, you don't push off a minyan, but the moment the minyan's over, everyone has to go home and check. And if you don't have a regular minyan, then you shouldn't go to shul. That's what Shulchan Aruch says. If you don't have a regular minyan that you go to every night, better to check b'dikat chametz right away and do arvit afterwards.
Even if you're an oval?
Huh? Well, if you're an oval and you're going every time, then you're always going. Then for you, the minyan is set. But I'm saying if you don't have a regular minyan.
He's like someone that sometimes does.
Yeah, he sometimes goes, sometimes doesn't go, whatever, depending on his mood. On that night, better. Exactly. Do the b'dikat chametz. Dalit. Ein boidkin loyla oir halavana. We cannot use the light of the moon to check our property. V'loyla oir hachama. Neither the light of the sun. Let's say you're going to go at the end of the day. It's sunset, but you're going to use the light of the sun to check your house. V'loyla oir ha'avuka. Nor the light of a torch. A torch is like a lot of fire. People, the Talmud says, will be afraid to take the torch to small corners. So you can't use a torch. Ela lo oir haner, a single individual candle. When are we talking about that you can't use these other sources of light? For holes, for small hidden places, for crevices. But if you have a patio area, there's a lot of light anyways there. You can check that to the light of the sun, and it's enough because you pretty much get to see everything with the sunlight. In middle of your courtyard, you don't have to check. Because even if there is chametz, you have birds. Birds love bread. They're going to eat any chametz that falls into your courtyard. You can just guarantee almost that the birds are going to take care of it, so you don't have to check it. Says the Rambam halacha, if a person has a hole in middle of his home, middle meaning sheben adam lachaveiroi. Let's say you share a wall between you and your neighbor, and there's a hole going through the wall. Who has to check the hole? Each Jew should check till where his hand could reach. We're not talking about a paper thin wall. We're talking about a proper wall. There's a thick wall. So every person goes till where his hand could reach, because that's where you might have put your chametz. The hashar mevatle beli, but the rest, just say in your heart it's canceled, and you rely on that. But if it's a hole in a shared wall between you and an idol-worshipping Gentile, not a regular non-Jew. I was saying last night that I'm getting permission from all my neighbors to build a sukkah in my apartment building because it's a shared space, and they're all being super nice about it. So not those non-Jews, idol-worshipping Gentile who doesn't like the Jews. If you have a hole between you and him, don't even stick your hand in to check where you can reach. Don't check it at all. Because maybe the idol-worshipping Gentile will say, his Jew is putting his hand in the wall, he's making magic, probably casting a spell on my property. Rather, better leave if there's chametz, better leave it there and cancel it in your heart. That's enough. Very important rule, even accepted lahalacha b'shulchan aruch. Any place that you don't bring in chametz, you don't have to check. I have relatives, they have a 2-story house, and the mother is very, very on top of her game. She doesn't allow food upstairs. No such thing. No food. So it's considered a place where you don't bring chametz. People think makes yourself crazy. Check your whole house 10 times, put it upside down. If you know that upstairs there's no chametz, you don't have to check there. You're good. Vav says the Rambam, holes in a house that are all the way down and all the way up. So like hole in the roof or in the floor. The commentaries explain it refers to even the bottom 3 tfachim, like the bottom 9 inches of a home. You don't have to worry about. We're going to see, because those holes don't get chametz. The gag hayotzia, the roof of a balcony. They translate over here. Others say it's the roof of an annex. If you have like a little storage shed, let's say, attached to your home. So the roof of that. V'refes bakar, a barn for cattle. The lulin, a chicken coop. Umasbein, a storage house for straw. V'oitzreis yayin, v'oitzreis shemen, she'enei mistapik mihen. Wine storehouses, oil storehouses that you don't use on a daily basis. People used to have like a bigger storage shed for all their wine and oil. Then they would bring it into another room into their home, and that's what they would use during a meal, let's say, to bring more wine or oil. But then you have the main storehouses, which you don't actually use. Ubeis dagim gedolim, and storage rooms for large fish, which also you don't go back and forth. You take one big salmon for your meal, and that's it. You don't go back and forth during a meal. Einon tzrichin bedika. Therefore, by default, these places don't need to be checked. Elohim kein hichnis lahem chametz, unless you know that you brought in chametz there. Aval oitzreis sheichar, but a storehouse is for beer. Beer is itself usually chametz. V'oitzreis yayin shemistapik mimenu, and storehouses of wine which you use, the ones that you go back and forth during a meal. You might carry a sandwich with you, and put some chametz there. Ubeis dagim ketanim, a storage house for small fish. Small fish, you bring some sardines to your meal, it runs out, you go back to the room, you get more fish. Ubeis ha'itzim, a place where you store wood. Ubeis hamurias, a place where you store brine, also used during a meal. V'chayre habayis ha'imtzayim, and holes in the middle of a home, v'chayetze ba'il, anything like it, tzrichin bedika. Those do have to be checked by default. Shestaman shemachnisim lahen chametz, because the assumption is that you do bring chametz there. V'im yada bevadai shal yichnis sham chametz, ein tzarich bedika. If you know for sure you didn't bring chametz, then you don't have to check it. But the default is you do have to check it. Ukeshabaydek hamartef, when you check a martef is a cellar, even today, but it's referring to a cellar of barrels full of wine or something like that. Baydek mimenu shtei shures hachitzaynos. You check the 2 outer rows, shehein ha'elyona v'shalemata mimena, meaning the top row and the one under it. This is a big argument in the beginning of Masechet Psachim in the Talmud, but this is the halacha opinion. If you have a cellar full of barrels, that's the door. So the first top row facing you and the row under it, those are the barrels that you have to check. Because by default, when you have a pile of barrels, if you come into the room in the middle of a meal, which barrel are you taking from first? The one on the top 2 rows. You're not going to go for the bottom one if you have a big pile of barrels. So those 2 you have to check. Other opinions in the Talmud say you have to check this entire row here, up and down. Some say this whole up one, but the bottom line is these 2. That's it. Those 2 rows are what you have to check. Now we're going to get into sfekot, doubts that could be created. You have a house that you checked for chametz, and now possibly chametz came back in. So the Rambam is going to tell us the parameters of when we're worried, when we're not. Ein chayshishin, we don't have to worry. Shema gerir a chulda chametz lamakim shein machnisin by chametz. That maybe a weasel, chulda is a weasel, maybe it took some chametz to a place where I wouldn't have brought in chametz. She'im nachosh mibayis lebayis, because if you're going to start worrying that maybe a weasel brought from one house to another chametz, nachosh me'ir le'ir. Well, maybe the weasel went from Sherman Oaks to Studio City and now put chametz in the other house. There's no end. Like you go into your house, you check it. The minute you go out, oh, maybe there's a weasel there, brought in chametz. You check it again. It makes no sense. Badak leil arba'asar. But if there's grounds to actually be worried, for example, you checked the night of the 14th. Where you put down 10 pieces of bread and you only found 9. The Rambam doesn't mention it explicitly as a custom, but it is a famous custom that we put down 10 pieces of bread by B'dikat Chametz, and we check for it and we find them. So if you put down 10 pieces and you only find 9, well, now you know you made yourself stuck. Now you have to worry, because you put down 10, you only have 9. And you must check your home a second time. Somebody mixed in, a weasel, a mouse, someone grabbed the 10th piece of bread, and who knows where that piece of bread is now. You better find it. Same thing is, you have a home, you checked your home, and then as you're walking out of your home, you see a mouse come in with chametz in its mouth. You must check a second time. Even if you find crumbs in the middle of the house, we don't say, oh, that's the mice's work. He ate the bread, and these are the crumbs. No. And we have to worry, maybe the mouse put away this bread that it had in its mouth in a hole or in a window. And those crumbs were there from before. Therefore you must go and check it again. If you didn't find anything, keep checking the whole house. Once you find the bread, which you know the mouse took in, no further searching is required. You see a baby come into a home, bayis baduk, a home that was already checked, holding a loaf of bread. It's a pretty ambitious baby. And you go in, you follow the baby into the house, and you find crumbs. Here, we do allow you to be lenient. You don't have to check the home. When it came to the mouse, we found the crumbs. We say, no, the mouse still has the bread. When you follow a baby into a home and you find crumbs, you don't have to worry anymore. The assumption is that the baby ate the bread. And these are the crumbs that fell from the baby when he was eating. Already back then they knew. Babies make crumbs when they eat. Mice, they don't make crumbs when they eat. If you found no crumbs, then the baby did his thing. He put it into his toy box or whatever. You got to check. Yud. Okay, here we come to a very important rule in halacha, and that is, we actually had this once before in Hilchos Shabbat. In the top line it says, Kol kavua kimechetza al mechetza dami. Anything which is stationary, if it's not moving, it has by default a status of 50-50. So if you don't know what something is, and it's in its original place, you have to assume it could be either this or that. So for example, here you go. You have 9 piles of matzah. Matzah means, let's say, not chametz food. And 1 pile of chametz. They're all sitting in their original place. They didn't move. You watch, a mouse comes, schleps something from one of the piles, and walks into a house. We don't know what it took, chametz or matzah. And it goes into a house that was already checked for chametz, holding this piece of bread, kosher bread or chametz bread, we don't know. You must check the entire house. Here we have the rule. Anything which is stationary is 50-50. Technically, if you go scientifically, there was a 9-to-1 chance that he took matzah. There was 9 piles of matzah, only 1 pile of chametz. But since all the piles were in their place, and the mouse took it from the place, you have to assume that it was 50-50. Maybe he took the chametz. And you got to check the house. Similarly, let's go with Yud Aleph. Shnei tziburin. You have 2 piles. Echad shel chametz ve'echad shel matzah. 1 pile chametz, 1 pile matzah. Kosher bread. Ushnei batim. In front of the 2 piles is 2 homes. Echad baduk ve'echad she'enei baduk. 1 checked and 1 not checked. Ubo shnei achbarim. 2 mice come. Zen natal chametz v'zen natal matzah. 1 takes from the pile of chametz. 1 takes from the pile of matzah. Ve'ein yadu ale'ezeh bayis nichna zeh shenatal chametz. We don't know where the chametz mouse went. Did he go into the non-checked house? In which case it's okay, just check the house because you're good. Or did he go into the checked house and now you got to check it again? That's one case. Another case. V'chein shnei batim bedukim. You have 2 checked homes. V'tzibur echad shel chametz. And 1 pile for sure chametz bread. Uba achbar v'natal. A mice comes and takes from the pile. Ve'ein yadu ale'ezeh bayis nichnas. We don't know which house he went into. You got to check 1 home, both homes. Which there's for sure a house with chametz now. Or let's go even further. You follow the mouse. You know which house he went into. You know which house has chametz now. And then you followed him in and you checked and you found nothing. Gotta check again or not. Or you went in and you found the loaf of bread. Is it the same loaf of bread or not? Or 9 matzah piles, 1 chametz pile. Here, the mouse didn't take it from the pile directly. One of the pieces of bread moved away from its pile, so the wind blew it away. And you don't know if it's chametz or matzah. And the mouse came and took that loaf of bread, that piece of bread, which separated and went into the house. Now over here, we have the second rule. It's called kol de parish, meruba parish. When something separates from its place, we give it the majority status. So here, since you have a 9-to-1 ratio of matzah to chametz, and the loaf of bread moved away, we say it's matzah. And so in all of these cases, in all of these cases, you don't have to check a second time, because there was nothing that was set in its place. Everything had moved before the chance to make a problematic mix came up. And so when something moves out of its place, we give it the majority status. The majority is, or the default is, that the house is checked, it's matzah, and it's okay. Yud Beis, you're sitting in your living room. You put chametz down in one corner. You leave the room for a minute, you go eat dinner, you come back to the living room, and the chametz is in the other side of the house, the other corner of the room. Or you put down 9 pieces for b'dikat chametz, and you find 10. Someone put extra chametz there. Or a mouse comes, takes the chametz, and you're just in doubt whether he came into the house or not. In all these cases, you got to check. Something fishy is up. You can't leave chametz here and it ends up over there unless somebody moved the chametz or there's more chametz. So you got to figure out what happened. Yud Gimel, nichnas achbar lebayis v'kikar b'fiv. A mouse comes into a home holding a piece of bread in its mouth. V'yotza achbar misham v'kikar b'fiv. The next thing you know, another mouse is coming out of the house also holding bread. Oimrim, we say, hu harishan shenichnas, hu ha'achron sheyotza. It's the same mouse, the same bread. Ve'ein tzarich livdaik. You don't have to check. Haya harishan shenichnas shachar. V'zeh sheyotza lavan. But if the mouse that came in was black and the mouse that came out was white, we don't say they're sharing bread. You don't say that the black mouse came in, dropped off the bread, and the white mouse took the bread and came out. Now you got to check, because there's probably 2 pieces of chametz in your house. By the way, right now it's before Sukkot. They're talking about mice in Bnei Brak. There was a big plague of mice. You hear about it? They're infesting all the sukkahs, and they don't know what to do. Should they sleep in the sukkah or not? Yeah, it's a big thing happening now. So we're talking about mice. Nichnas achbar v'kikar b'fiv. A mouse comes in holding a loaf of bread in its mouth. V'yotzasa misham chulda v'kikar b'fiha. And a weasel comes out holding the bread. Tzarich livdik. Now you have to check, because maybe it's different bread. Yotzas misham chulda ve'achbar v'kikar b'fiha. But if the weasel comes out holding the mouse and the bread, you know the weasel found itself some dinner. I found this picture online. Geschmack, a weasel chapped a mouse. That's probably what it looks like. Okay. There's no bread. I couldn't get the bread in the mouse. But you see here, a weasel could hold a mouse in its mouth. That's how big it is. And so if it's holding the bread as well, you don't have to check. It's the same loaf that was in the mouth of the mouse. Just the weasel caught the mouse. So he took everything. Took the mouse, took the bread. If a snake went into a hole holding bread, and you see there's a snake in your hole in your house with bread, you don't have to bring call it a charmer, a person who can take care of snakes, to take it out. This is actually a story that happened in the Talmud, and a rabbi came to his rabbi to ask what to do. There was a snake holding bread. You can see there's chametz. Do you have to go get it? You're putting yourself in danger. The chametz is not going anywhere. He's going to for sure eat it. So as long as in your mind you declare that it's batel, you just cancel it, so you're good. Yudalid, kazayis chametz b'shmei kaira. If you have a kazayit of chametz in your roof beams, way up there, you're not going to access it. You would think. Says the Talmud, and therefore the Rambam rules, you must get a ladder and take it down. Who knows? It could be an earthquake. Something could happen. The loaf of bread can fall down, and you might come to eat it. But if the chametz was in a pit, so we don't say a person's going to go down to find chametz. We don't obligate you to go get it. Declare it batel in your heart, and that's enough. Tesvav. Okay, this is ancient stuff. No one does this today. But you have a block of yeast that hardened, and you made it into a chair. Okay, it's your chair. It sits in your house, and that's what you use it for. You're not planning to eat it. You don't eat your chair. Im tach paneha betit. Only if you covered it with a layer of clay or mud, harezu betelo muter lekaima, it's considered to be nullified, and you can keep it. Says the Rambam, batzek shebesidke ha'areva. What if you have dough that accumulated in the cracks of a bowl? This is like an ancient dough bowl, so you can kind of see how it happens. Today you have stainless steel. It's very hard to get dough stuck to your bowl. But if you have this kind of a bowl, and you made a dough in it, and some dough, got stuck in the cracks. So is it considered chametz or not? Im yesh kazayas b'makom echad, if there's an olive size of dough in one area, chayav levar, you must destroy that chametz. V'im lav, and if not, you can't point to one specific place and you have enough forbidden chametz. So im haya asur lechazik by shivrei ha'areva elistem by nekev, if the dough is there for a purpose, it's kind of holding the cracks together or stuffing a hole, batal b'miyutai, then it becomes nullified, and its minuteness, it's so small, we don't have to care about it. V'im lav, but if it serves no purpose, it's just stuck to the bowl, chayav levar, you got to get rid of it. Hayu by shnei chatzoi zeisim b'shnei mekaymes. Let's say you had 2 half olive measures of dough in 2 parts of the bowl. The chut shel batzek b'neim, and a small strand of dough connecting them. Royan, we check. Kol she'ilu yinatal hachut nitalin imai. If when you pull at the little strand, it'll pull both of the pieces of dough, chayav levar, you have to destroy them. B'im lav, and if not, ein nitzarich levar, you don't have to destroy them. Leave them there over Pesach, it's not considered chametz, no problem. Tezayin b'medvarim amurim, when do we say this? Ba'areva, in a bowl. Aval bebayis, but if you have a home, and 2 pieces of dough are in the home, connected by a strand, afal pishim yinatal hachut ein nitalin imai. Even if you pull out the strand and they don't pull after it the 2 pieces of dough, chayav levar, you have to destroy them. Because 2 pieces of dough in a home could easily be gathered together. And sometimes you're going to gather them, and you're going to have a kazayat of forbidden chametz. What if you had half of an olive size of dough on the first floor, and half of an olive size of dough on the second floor? Half an olive size in the home, half an olive size in the courtyard, in the patio. Half an olive size in one room, and then half an olive size in the inner room, past it. If and since those half olive size of dough are stuck to the wall, or stuck to the beams, or stuck to the ground, you don't have to destroy them. You can leave them there, cancel them in your heart, and that's enough. Yud Zayin. Actually, quite common nowadays as well with Airbnbs and rentals. If you rent out a house on the 14th of Pesach, and you didn't talk about whether it's checked for chametz or not, you just rented the house. The assumption is that the renter, the guy who owns the home, the landlord, already checked it because it's already the 14th. You checked the night of the 14th, the night before. So he already checked it, and you don't have to check it again. But if we know for sure that the landlord didn't check it, and all you have is a woman or a child saying, we checked it, and they're believed. Everybody is trustworthy when it comes to destroying chametz. Nobody's going to lie about it. And everyone's allowed to check. There's no limit. It doesn't be adult male checking the chametz. Anybody could check for chametz. Even women, slaves, and children that are typically not obligated or able to fulfill other mitzvahs on behalf of others. There has to be a child old enough who has the mental maturity to know how to check a house. Somebody rents a house out to a colleague. If the 14th of Nisan arrived before the landlord handed the tenant the key, the obligation rests with the landlord. He has to check. But if the 14th already arrived after the landlord gave the key, so the renter already had the key when it came the 14th of Erev Pesach, the renter, the tenant, has to check. There's a big problem. You're on the Airbnb app, and you're looking, one of your filters, one of your requirements is it must be checked for chametz. And you rented a home, and it says, the host checked already for chametz. You come into the house, and you find a loaf of bread. You must check the house again. You cannot undo the transaction. It's not considered mistaken. Even if typically people charge to do b'dikat chametz. Because you're doing a mitzvah, Talmud says a person would love to do a mitzvah with his own money. And so even if you got cheated out of your transaction, the guy said, I checked my money, you didn't check, you have to check, and it's on you. Yutes. A person's going to sea, or with a caravan, going on a long trip, before Pesach. What do you do? If it's within 30 days of Pesach, zakuk livdaik. Before you leave, you have to check your home. But if you're leaving, let's say before Purim, so over a month before Pesach, you don't have to check your house. Leave it, come back whenever you come back. But if you know you're going to be back before Pesach, no matter how early you leave, You must first check and then leave your home. Maybe you're going to come back late. Who knows what delays with travel today? Come home the eve of Pesach, it's twilight. You're not going to have time to burn the chametz. You're going to end up having chametz on your property on Pesach, the most severe of prohibitions. If you're not planning to come back, you don't have to check. We don't say, oh, maybe you're going to change your mind and come back. No, you're not coming back, you're not coming back. Somebody who converts his home into a storage room for chametz stuff. If it's within 30 days of Pesach, you must first check your home, then bring in your storage stuff. If you're converting your house into a storeroom before 30 days before Pesach, if you're going to clear it out, empty it before Pesach comes in, first check the home, then make it into a storeroom. If you aren't planning to clear it out before Pesach, it's going to stay that way over Pesach. You don't have to search for chametz. You just leave it as it is, and you make your storehouse, and it's no problem.